think that, or at least he didn't think that they should follow a pattern that's not working. Well, that's what they're doing. They're trying to put this bank together. They're working towards that goal. And obviously, at the end of the day, there will be one person that will control all the banks and all the money, and that will be the Antichrist. Now, what I wanted to show you here is, because they've already mentioned in one of the videos about the gold, the commodities in gold. And of course, we know that gold and silver are going to be very, very instrumental, playing a role in the last days. How? We'll take a look at Revelation chapter 18. In verse 11 and 12, it says this, "And the merchants of the earth shall weep and mourn over her, for no man buyeth her merchandise any more, the merchandise of gold and silver." Then he outlines some other things like the precious stones, and of the pearls and the fine linen, the purple and the silk. So all these things are going to be very, very expensive. Why are they going to be wailing? Well, God's going to take it away. Christ is going to take it away from them. So if people are crying, why would they be crying over things that are not worth much? Well, obviously, gold and silver are going to go out of sight. That before it's all over, when you take a look at what the market experts are saying, that when the dollar dies, gold and silver will take over. They'll be the hard currency. And who is buying up most of the gold and the silver around the world? It's India, Russia, and China. And just put these things together. You may not have known that, but that's what's happening. These nations are buying up as much gold, silver as they can get. Because they know when the economy falls apart, and it will, gold and silver is going to go through the roof. And so what better way to back up currency with gold and the silver? Of course, the United States of America, they had at one time the currency backed by silver, and they got rid of it. And now it's just this fiat currency, this paper that's dying out slowly, but it's going in the direction that will lead us to what we see in the book of Revelation. So let me go now to this video. You're going to really find this interesting. And again, I'll do the same thing, connect the dots for you.
Well, I can tell you that the Jesuits have a very strong stranglehold on China as well, but I can also tell you that the transition of economic strength is going to happen, but it's going to happen in a smooth way. It's not going to be a transition through a currency war like that terrible, corrupt group is trying to manipulate.
Hello and welcome to Sophie & Co. Me, Sophie Shepard. Now said, the U.S. governmental shutdown. What is it? A temporary disorder or the symptom of a serious disease? Budget talks are tough in any state as economies struggle to stay afloat among the stormy waves of the global crisis. But is there somebody who benefits from this troubled state of affairs, or maybe even controls the winds?
In the reality of the global economic slowdown, money still makes the world go round. In the circles of vice and lust, political maneuvering and corruption. Is money the source of all evil, or just those who control it? Are banks there to keep the people's wealth, or to steal it? Can any government be called honest? Who runs the economic and political seas?
Our guest today is whistleblower Karen Hughes, former senior counselor at the World Bank. Karen, it's great to have you on the show today.
Thanks for having me, Sophie. I'm glad to be with you.
So the government shutdown, is the move on the part of the Republicans justified?
Now, before I let this go on any further, just understand who this lady is. Because she's working for the World Bank, so she knows what's going on. Listen to what she says.
I think off Obamacare worth all this mess?
I think there's something more going on behind the scenes. A lot more, actually.
What do you mean?
Well, there is a terrible currency problem. We're on the verge of a currency war. The Federal Reserve is printing dollars like there's no tomorrow, and if they keep going, the rest of the world is not going to accept them. As it is, the BRICS countries, Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa, have decided that they're going to finance the trade among these countries with offsets and pay for the difference in gold. And
but how is that connected with the shutdown,
because
now see, paying it through gold. I'm not just blowing smoke here. I've been following the news. I'm not only following the news, I know what the Lord has pointed to, and they're converging faster than I even expected.
The U.S. Congress has been fighting with the presidency because the presidency has been in total contempt, and the highest legal officer of the United States government has also been in contempt of Congress in fighting this international corruption that is ruining the dollar as an international reserve currency.
But you know, economists have been predicting the dollar will fall ever since the crisis in 2008, but the government has managed to keep it afloat.
Well, not for long. If you look at what's going on in the gold and other precious metals markets, silver as well, we're headed towards something called permanent gold backwardation. That means that there's a loss in confidence in the fiat currencies that are issued by those private banks. They like to consider themselves as public banks, but they're really owned by private entities. And these currencies are about to crash because they're valueless. That's what always happens to paper currencies that aren't backed by assets.
So what did I tell you about the revelation, the gold and the silver? And she's talking about the same thing, how the gold and the silver is going to be what? Well, if you're holding gold and silver, you're going to be in good standing compared to somebody who's got all this fiat money, and then when the dollar dies, it's not going to be worth anything. But the gold and the silver, will.
But well, like you mentioned, gold backwardation. Gold is often chanted as perfectly safe investment, an alternative to the dollar even. But how come the price of gold is falling?
Because of market manipulation. But that can only continue for so long because the central banks are running out of gold and the rest of the world are lining up to buy them. If you want to buy gold today, you have to pay a premium. What they're offering in the future is called a naked short. They don't have the gold to back those offers. That's illegal what they're doing.
I will get back to gold in a bit, but for now I would like to...
So let me just break it in here for you. In other words, what they're saying is people are going out and they're purchasing gold and they're getting paper for it. But when the market falls apart and those people try to get gold, they're going to turn the paper in and they're not going to have enough gold to give it to them. So that's what makes it illegal. Now, I know this for a fact because I have a brother of mine, a Christian brother of mine, who happens to go to the church that I do, and we sat down and talked. And we talked a little bit about the economy, and he was telling me that he had gold. And I said, do you have physical gold or do you have paper gold? And he told me that he had it in paper. And I said, well, you're going to be in problems here. And what you should do is call whoever you got the gold from with that paper and demand that you want that gold to be placed in your hand. In other words, you want to hold the physical gold in your hand. Well, he did what I asked, and they told him they couldn't give it to him. And this isn't a made-up story. This is somebody's life here that expected to get gold, and he couldn't get it. Now, this is what this woman who used to work for the World Bank is talking about. That kind of thing.
Focus on Obamacare. In your opinion, is Obamacare really that crucial for the U.S. economy?
What you have is something that's very good for the medical insurers, because most of the other countries that offer medical coverage do this through a single issuer. And that's not what we have here. What we have here is a bill that was drafted by the medical insurance companies. It's not good for this economy. It never was.
But why? Why do you say it's not good?
Because what's happening is the workers that worked full-time are being put deliberately on part-time basis so that the companies can avoid giving them medical insurance coverage under the provisions of the law.
Now, what she just said there, again, Google Frank Tamora. And about what she just said is my warnings. I've been telling you that even before this law was passed, what was going to happen as far as people being taken out of a 40-hour job and placed into a part-time job so that they wouldn't have to pay out the benefits. And that's where we're headed. And it's definitely a detriment to the economy that's already stalled. I'm glad that I found this interview with this woman from the World Bank.
You know, this Obamacare thing, I've heard it many times being compared to socialism, communism sometimes even. Do you trace the resemblance?
That's just because the mainstream media, when they report about what's going on, are doing it by telling lies and anything that's good for the powers that be. The mainstream media is completely owned and controlled by the same companies, private companies, that own the Federal Reserve System. Most of the American citizens are clueless about the corruption that's rifling their economy.
But just to make sure, are you saying that everything about Obamacare is bad? Or are there good things about it?
No, of course there are good things about it, but the problem is that the people that wanted to get a decent coverage were not given the tools, they were not given the equipment, they were not given the press coverage, the honest press coverage that a society needs to enact just legislation. Their congresspeople are all bribed by these corrupt forces. And the American citizens have zero confidence in their Congress.
So at this point, you side with the Republicans for blocking the Medicare?
I'm not siding with Democrats or Republicans because both of those parties have been co-opted by this terrible corrupt force that I'm talking about.
What we have right now is Americans being forced to get health insurance. How does it go with their life?
Now, let me stop it there, because this terrible force that she's talking about the people behind the push for a one world government. She didn't come out and say it, but that's what she's talking about. That's what she's alluding to.
Of both liberties and freedom of choice.
It's not so much a question of being forced. You have to look at those parts of the society that have been thrown under the bus. The uneducated children who are not given a superior education like we used to have. We are a society that is giving short shrift to the people that need us. I'm not saying that we ignore the health needs of our country. I'm saying that we ignore the mainstream media because they are not telling us the truth.
You know, I've also heard Obama supporters argue that American capitalism is on the verge of death in its present form, the way it is existing now, and the social injections, meaning the Medicare and Obamacare, are needed is the only way to reform it or save it. Do you agree or disagree with that?
The problem is not with the American citizens. They are a wonderful group. Their values are good. It's just that they're not given the tools that they need to have a just society. They're not given the basic information about what is really going on and who's benefiting from the economies that they're being told. They're being told that they have no money. They have taken an entire city, Detroit, and declared it bankrupt. When what's actually happening is their tax dollars are not even staying in their society. Their tax dollars are going by treaty to the United Kingdom, and then they're being transferred to the Vatican, to the Bank of the Vatican. This is not a society that is...
Now, did you hear what she said? It's going to the Vatican, right? It's going to the Vatican. Now, the Pope, who is the head of the Vatican, and most people don't know this, but the Vatican is a state, and the Pope is the head of the state. And when you read the book of Revelation, you better read Revelation chapter 17, because in Revelation chapter 17, there is no doubt that you see the Roman Catholic Church, the city with the 7 hills, the people with the gold, the silver, the precious stones. And everything that is in Revelation 17 points to Rome and the church. The city with the 7 hills is Rome. Rome, Italy. And so she's right on the mark. And of course, you have the European Union. The European Union is the resurrection, the revived Roman Empire that the Lord spoke about, that I showed you here. The final outcome of the legs, the Roman Empire. The revived Roman Empire, of which 10 will be giving their power over to the Antichrist. The city with the 7 hills. We know that the Rome is going to play a major role in the last days of the false church and the false prophet and the Antichrist ruling from a revived Roman Empire. So let's go on.
Going to be sustainable on any basis, for any reason.
But do you feel like American economy is picking up? Because we hear President Obama saying the shutdown hurts American economy, but at the very sensitive moment when it has just started to catch up. But do you feel like it's catching up, really?
Oh, those numbers about the employment are completely fabricated, because they're not counting those people who have given up ever finding a job as unemployed. That's ridiculous. The real rate is just about double what they reported as being.
So the American debt looks like a doomed patient. Is there any other possibility for it than just grow into eternity forever? I mean, raising the debt ceiling once or twice a year, what's the problem?
The problem is actually, when you talk about debt, that our currency is financed by debt. Our currency is issued by the Federal Reserve instead of the Treasury, which is, it's unconstitutional. When the Federal Reserve System was instituted in 1913, most of the Congress was on break. They sneaked that legislation through. So the debt is there simply for those bankers to put an interest on it and have it grow and compound every year. The debt is a fabrication. It's probably should be repudiated.
But is it going to go on and on forever?
Until you've looked at all of the implications.
But do you think it's going to go on and on forever?
No, what I think is going to happen is that at the upcoming Bretton Woods meetings on October 9th, the countries of the world, the foreign ministers of the world, are going to sit down and have a rational basis for currency rather than this fiat currency, which is absolutely, what can I say? It makes no sense to anyone but the bankers that are issuing it.
So when you look at the concept of the debt, it's much more than just borrowing money, right? It makes you control. For example, in the case of the U.S., who controls it? You mean the big corporations or countries like China and Japan who control large chunks of the debt?
Well, that's a very good question, and fortunately, some mathematicians at the Swiss Federal Institute of Technology have given us a very precise answer. They did a study of who owns and controls the companies on the capital markets, 43,000 companies. And they found out that there's a secret super entity, they call it, that owns 60% of the earnings every year and 40% of the assets. They did this by putting the same people on the boards of these companies. So they have 10 times the economic power that they're entitled to. And they thought no one would catch them at it. This is a huge conglomerate that has been rigging the LIBOR prices, it's been rigging all of the commodities prices, it's been trading in the securities markets with insider information. It has got to be stopped. It also bought up all the media and has been lying to people deliberately. This is going to stop.
So just to answer my question, the government is controlled by the conglomerate or the corporations rather than countries that are up and coming economically, right? So why haven't these corporations or conglomerates, as you call it, been caught? Why is nothing changing?
That's the whole point about it. They like to think they're in control, but they're not. They're not above the law. And we citizens know exactly what they're up to. We've been working on this problem. All of the governors of the states have been working on this terrible corruption. So have the attorneys general, so have the sheriffs, and it's not going to continue. The American people are taking back their government, and they are stopping this terrible corruption.
You know, as of today, the United States is the financial heart of the world. And whether it collapses or keeps on going, it's obviously wrong this much power is concentrated in one place. Asia is a rising monster right now. Could it be that stealing his financial role from the U.S.? Do you think China, for example, could steal its financial role from the United States? Or are they also controlled by the same financial elite you're mentioning?
Well, I can tell you that the Jesuits have a very strong stranglehold on China as well, but I can also tell you that the transition of economic strength from the Western countries to the East is going to happen, but it's going to happen in a smooth way. It's not going to be a transition through a currency war like that terrible, corrupt group is trying to manipulate. everyone into. No, we're going to have a peaceful power transition this time around. We're not going to have World War III. They tried to pull it off in Syria. They're now thinking they can pull it off in Iran. It's not happening. The citizens of the world see what they're doing, and we're not letting them get away with it this time.
All right, after the break.
All right, so she has a lot there out there, throwing a lot out on the table, a lot to digest. Now, one of the things that she was talking about, and one of the things that I put up, was the fact that nations around the world are watching what's going on in the United States. The United States, little by little, is beginning to crumble. One of those things is bankruptcy cities. There is a website. Let me go to it. You'll see here, and the reason why I wanted to do this for you, you see I already highlighted it for you. Take a look. It says General Purpose Local Government Bankruptcy Filing. You'll see she mentioned Detroit. Well, that was the last one. You see them happening in California. There's another one in California, Alabama, Pennsylvania, Rhode Island, and of course Idaho in the near future. Now, I've given many warnings, and I'm going to give you another warning. As the money in the United States gets tighter, the economy stays stalled, expect that the revenues in the cities around the United States are going to come to a standstill, or at least be stalled like they are right now. And without more GP, or in other words, growing in the United States, all you're going to do is put more weight on the legs that are holding up the United States. But it's not going to hold up much longer, that's for sure. And expect that there will be other cities that will be filing for bankruptcy. Now, Rutgers put out an article, and as long as the head or the former head of the World Bank was talking about Detroit and bankruptcies, look at this, the largest ever U.S. city, bankruptcy cuts coming to Detroit, creditors and retirees. And here is some pictures of people. Now, in one of the videos, when they were interviewing these experts, they were talking about how the banks were taking the money away. And obviously, if you have retirement and the city goes bankrupt, you really have to be concerned about how you're going to get any money if they don't have any. And this is how they're protesting, some of the pictures that you can see. I'll just go through them pretty quick because Detroit's in a mess. You see the sign here, Banks Owe Us, Detroit bankruptcy, eligibility ruling. So it doesn't look good, but I'm not going to water things down because I know what the end result is. I know where we're going to end up, or at least those people who receive Jesus know what is going to happen. And the people that receive Jesus, they are going to be taken out of the way when the wrath of God is poured out. So it's a good idea to understand what's going on now so that you're not taken by surprise, or as it comes as a thief in the night, as the Lord Jesus said. Now, as far as can they steal your money? Well, take a look at this headline here. Detroit granted bankruptcy protection after judge rules in the city's favor. Says a federal judge announced Tuesday that Detroit is eligible for bankruptcy protection, the first time in U.S. history that a major city has been declared bust. Now, this Judge Stevens Rose of the United States Bankruptcy Court ejected an attempt by the city's pensions, get this, the pension funds and unions to have the bankruptcy action thrown out. The city needs help, said Rhodes. Detroit is facing mounted crime rates, spreading blight, and deteriorating quality of life. The city no longer has the resources to provide its residents with basic police, fire, and services. It's a mess. And there's many cities heading in the same direction. And people are worrying about their pensions being gone. And obviously, when you have federal judges ruling in the favor of the city, it discounts what? It discounts the money coming into the pockets of those people who worked for so many years. So not very, very good. And then when you read Matthew chapter 24, verse 7, and the Lord warns about kingdom coming against kingdom, you get a glimpse of the whole puzzle. And what I mean by that is, why would people fight against themselves? Well, if you have chaos in a city and you can't get money that you deserved after working 25, 30, 40 years, and you have no income, you panic. And the crime rate is already going up. And people, if it goes down like this, there's going to be chaos in the streets. And I believe this is one of the reasons why you're seeing all these black ops that are going around the United States. And they're bringing troops from overseas to prepare for chaos in the United States. Could this be what the Lord was talking about? Kingdom against kingdom. We're seeing it happen in Syria. We're seeing it happen in Egypt. We saw it in 2008 in the European Union when they had so many problems with their economy. And again, it repeated itself, and it's about to repeat itself again. And so these are the things that the Lord told us to look for. Not good things, but at least we have the peace of the Lord in us, knowing that He is going to save those who love Him. He's going to spare those that love Him by taking us at the proper time, bringing us into heaven. Now, I'm going to go back. Here we go with the headline. China's century. More and more economies will want to trade in yen. Now, it's a little bit longer article. Let's just go with it right here. It says China's economy will soon be the world's dominating economy, and it's natural that other economies want to ride to trade, or would want to trade in yen, not in US dollars. And we already saw that in a couple of the videos. It says the RT, this is the news that was asking these questions. How big of a victory is it for China that its currency has become the second most used currency in the world? Now ahead of the euro. Do you think it will continue growing in popularity? This is what was stated by this supposedly expert. If you consider that the Chinese government has only allowed a lot of trade finance with the outside world since 2009, then its status as number 2 currency used for the global trade finance is very significant, as it happened in a very short period of time. And the reason that it has happened is, as you know, China, as the second largest economy, has the largest foreign exchange reserves in the world and certainly is becoming a global power. So, this is consistent with the rise to that global power status. Now, what's so important about this? And you can go down and read the rest of this article, but let me go back to my site to connect some dots here for you. You'll see the flashing prophecy sign with the Chinese flag. Well, the Lord gives us information about China. The Lord tells us about the kings to the east. Where is the king to the east? East of what? East of, we have direction from the Bible? Sure do. East of the Euphrates River. Look at this. This is what Christ has told us. It said to the 6th angel who had the trumpet, release the 4 angels who were bound at the great river Euphrates. And the 4 angels who had kept ready for this very hour and day, month and year were released to kill 1/3 of mankind. The number of the mounted troops was 200 million. I heard the number. Now, Revelation chapter 9, verse 14 through 6 goes on to say this. The 6th angel poured out his bowl in a great river Euphrates, and its water was dried up to prepare the way the kings from the east. So China is one of those nations east of the Euphrates River. And it just so happens that the Chinese have an army that numbers 200 million soldiers. You think that's a coincidence? It is. God is showing us things about world powers, nations that are going to be placed in the Great Tribulation. And of course, you have one of the nations becoming a dominant ruler. And it just makes sense because they're marching down to where Christ had given to us so many years before it ever took place. If you could be sitting up where God is and see the whole outlook of the future, you would see what's going to happen. So what's going on in China is China's buying up the gold, they're building up their military, they're becoming very influential in the BRICS along with Russia, which Russia is going to play a major role in the prophecies in the last days as well through Ezekiel chapter 38, the war against Israel. And so all of these things are connected. And again, this is just a microcosm of what God is showing us through all the different prophecy. So let's listen to what he has to say.
Well, after 2 days, the BRICS summit has just wrapped up now in India, creating an alternative global lender and stepping away from the dollar.
Now again, remember what Peter Schiff said, that they were, he didn't think that they were going to do this global bank, but they actually did it. The BRICS summit. That's what they're doing. Watch.
As a reserve currency, all among the main objectives. In New Delhi is Auntie's Priya Sridhar.
The leaders from the 5 leading emerging economies in the world, Brazil, Russia, India, China, South Africa, are all here in New Delhi for the 4th annual BRICS summit. Russian President Dmitry Medvedev held a bilateral meeting with the Indian Prime Minister Manmohan Singh. There have been a lot of things on the agenda. One of the main themes of this year's summit is how these growing economic powers are also starting to have more political clout on major international issues like Syria. And again, we saw Russia and China saying that they back a ceasefire in Syria. They want peace in Syria, but they don't expect President Assad to step down. They don't want him to step down, like many of the Western leaders have said. Let's take a listen to what the Russian president had to say.
One of the priorities for BRICS for the years to come should be the strengthening and key role of the UN Security Council in maintaining international peace and security, and also ensuring that the UN is not used as a cover for regime change and unilateral actions to resolve conflict situations.
And that was another thing that all of these 5 leaders talked about, reforming the United Nations. Another point that everyone was talking about was Iran and how sanctions are not going to work on Iran. These 5 countries are expected in the next 8 years to make up 50.
Now, did you hear what she said? The sanctions are not going to work in Iran. Go back and again, Google my warnings all the way back from 5 years ago when I told you what was going to happen with Iran. Iran would not stop their quest for a nuclear bomb, and they haven't stopped. And now you have Barack Obama giving them more leeway, reducing the sanctions so that the Iranians can keep moving towards getting a nuclear bomb that they have said they want to use a weapon of mass destruction to annihilate the nation of Israel. All of these things are tying together. And I'm praying that the Holy Spirit shows you and awakens your heart to the point where you want to receive Jesus Christ, not waiting tomorrow, but do it right now.
50% of the global GDP. Even earlier this year, all of the BRICS countries were discussing potentially bailing out Europe from its financial crisis. One of the major things on the agenda was talking about a potential BRICS basket currency that could serve as an alternative to the American dollar or the euro. Today, all the 5 leaders signed an agreement to actually give out loans in their local currencies, which is an...
Let me stop it right there, because this is important, because they're talking about bailing out Europe. Why is this important? Well, if you have the European Union, which is the revived Roman Empire, and they're hurting, and you want to help them bail out, well, let's go to the prophecy in Daniel chapter 2, where in verse 41 through 43 it talks about them not cleaving together. So I talked about this in my other video. The European Union is having problems. You saw what Peter Schiff, these other people were talking about Spain or Italy. They may go bankrupt. We saw what was happening in Greece. And so it becomes very, very relevant when it's talking about the European Union and bailing out the nation. Now keep in mind, I believe that in the near future, we may see the division of the European Union filtered down where you have 10 strong people giving, or leaders, giving their power over to the Antichrist.
Another move that they're thinking about, moving away from the dollar and moving away from the euro. Another huge thing on the agenda here in Delhi was the idea of a joint BRICS bank that could serve as an alternative to the West.
Again, all of these signs, just about every one of the people, the reporters, are talking about the reserve currency going to something different. Let's put it this way. I may not have the answer to identify exactly what currency it would be, whether it be the BRICS, whether it be the European Union, the euro, or whatever it may be, whether it be the denarii from Babylon, Iraq, who will rise, and it is rising, by the way. But whatever it is coming. And the movements that you're seeing, whether it be from BRICS or the Bretton Woods meetings or whatever it is, the end result will be exactly what Jesus Christ said. It will be the revived Roman Empire, one man shooting up out of the 10 nations, and he will be the Antichrist ruling. Now, according to prophecy, will Turkey play a major role in the European Union? Well, let's look at it this way. All right, let's check it out first of all. You see Turkey stats, visa-free talks. Now, I'm not going to go to there for time constraints, but let me just tell you this. Turkey is sitting down with the European Union, and they've been going through a process to become a full member of the European Union. In other words, right now, the European Union is made up of 27 nations that were in the old Roman Empire. So if you had the Turkish Empire come back in, it's very, very significant. Let me show you. Before we get there, look at this. The Minister of Foreign Affairs to represent the EU as the new step in Turkey's accession negotiations is made. This article deals with the Turkish government sitting down with the European Union and working through the problems that were holding them back from being a member in the European Union. They're working on it. Another one of the step phases leading to the last world empire. Now, in my book, I give you some information, and I want to bring this information to you about why I believe Turkey is very, very important to Bible prophecy. Now, in Revelation chapter 17, we see the verses that Christ gave to us. I think that they're very, very important verses. In verses 10 through 12, it says this, "And there are 7 kings." Now, kings are leaders of nations. You should know that. 5 are fallen, and 1 is, and the other is not come yet. And when he come, he must continue a short space. And the beast that was, and is not, even he is the 8th, and is of the 7th, and goeth into perdition. And the 10 horns which thou sawest are 10 kings, which have received no kingdom as yet, but receive power as kings when out with the beast. What is Christ showing us? Well, keep in mind when John the Apostle, the youngest of all the apostles, Jesus showed him what was going to happen for the future, and out of what the Lord showed him, he wrote the book of Revelation. John didn't actually write it. He's not the author. All he did was the scribe to put down what Jesus told him and what he showed him. And so what is going on here? Well, we know when you take a look, you have obviously the 7, when it talks about the 7 mountains, look at this. I believe it has a twofold meaning. We have Egypt, number 1, Syria, number 2, Babylon, Medo-Persian, and Greece, Rome, and the Turkish, right? Now, each one of these empires has representative of a horn. You had 1, 2, 3, 4, and Greece had 4 horns because when Alexander lost his kingdom after dying at the young age, his kingdom was separated into 4 different parts by generals. And Christ, or in the Old Testament, God, showed us that this was going to happen. So you had 4 horns coming out of the Greece, and then Rome would be another one, and then you have the Turkish Empire that came after Rome. So what do you have? You have 10 horns. right? You have leaders of the nations, but you have 10 horns. Now, take a look at this, because Rome saw the Turkish Empire, Rome was defeated. They went into disintegration, much like you see in the United States doing now. They got fat and sloppy, and you know the rest of the story, just like what's happening with the United States. But the Turkish Ottoman Empire, that came into fruition. So when you take a look at what is the Lord telling us, we believe that it is possible that when John was alive, okay, he saw 5 of the kingdoms had already passed. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Right? 5 are fallen, 1 is. The one that was installed at the time that John wrote it was what? It was the Roman Empire. All right? So, and 1 is. And the other is not yet come. And it did come. It was the Turkish Empire. And when he comes, he must continue for a short span. Of course, the Turkish Empire left just like the rest of these. And the beast that was and is not, even he is the 8th. And is of the 7. So Turkey, the Ottoman Empire, if it comes back into the European Union, which was from the first Roman Empire, it could fulfill this prophecy. I'm not saying for sure that it is, but it's definitely something to consider, and for something that we should be watching what's going on in Turkey, especially when Turkey have made, and it's in my book, by the way, Turkey wanted to come back and to revive itself as the Ottoman Empire, which would fit exactly what we see from the scriptures, making him part of the 7, but he would be the 8th. In other words, he returned. Very, very interesting about Turkey. That's why when I show you the information about the European Union being very interested in beginning the talks again to bring the European Union into a larger number with Turkey, that is significant. Now, to end today's segment, I just wanted to bring you the prophecy that I give to you almost every day that I post. And this prophecy has to do with the birds, the fish, and the animals dying. You'll see it here as I highlight it in Hosea chapter 4, verses 1 through 3. And we've been watching the news. And in the news, if you've been with me for any amount of time, you'll see that mass numbers are dying. Birds, fish, or animals. And what I did is I just added the last 3 events that took place. And this one took place on December 2nd, the 3rd, and the 4th. Thousands of fish dying, birds are dying from the Asian flu. Different places around the world. Here in Florida, you had 10 dead whales and 41 stranded. And these things are reoccurring over and over again. And once more, in my book, let me go over to it, there's a chapter about the birds, the fish, and the animals dying under the banner, if you will, of the problems in the world. And part of the problems in the world are pestilence and disease, and this also applies to the birds, the fish, and animals. So if you want all of the details of all of this information, you take a look, because it's in there today in my December 4th, my newest edition of that book. I want to thank you all for bearing with me, staying with me, and allowing me to show you some of the things that the Lord has shown me, to encourage you to understand that these things are not a coincidence, that Jesus loves you, Jesus got you to this point to see this information, and he wants to use this information and his word, obviously, first, putting them together to lead you into his arms for salvation. It's your choice, whether you believe these things are all coincidence and you want to dismiss it, or you realize the truth and you come to Christ. This is Frank DeMora, the End Times Research Ministry. God bless.